Hey there, and welcome to RecoverED, a podcast from the Magdalen House, a recovery community for alcoholism. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and we're known affectionately by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. The RecoverED podcast is made to educate the community on alcoholism, the Magdalen House, our programs, and resources that we offer to the community. In each episode, you will get to know the disease of alcoholism a little better, and soon you'll know how you can shatter the stigma around alcoholism in your community with your host, me, Kelsey Amos. I'm a recovered alcoholic and women's program manager here at the Magdalen House. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Magdalen House podcast. Super excited for this episode today. I get the honor and privilege of interviewing one of my favorite people, somebody that I really admire. Super excited about what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about the difference between the Magdalen House and Alcoholics Anonymous. So before we get into all that, I'm just going to let our guest introduce herself, and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you, Kelsey. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Kroencke, and I'm the CEO of the Magdalen House. I have been here on staff since 2016, and I have been a volunteer here since early in sobriety. My sobriety date is June 2nd of 2007, and I started volunteering here at the Magdalen House in July of 2007. So I've been a volunteer here for a very long time and have been on staff here for a long time as well, and have watched the evolution of the Magdalen House transform from a really deep association with Alcoholics Anonymous and then really just become an independent entity of our own. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, I think it's really important because there's a lot of confusion, right? There's a lot of confusion. So let's start out. My first question for you is, can you talk about what we are here at the Magdalen House and what we do?
Absolutely. So the Magdalen House is a nonprofit business, and what that means is that we are 501c3. We are recognized by the IRS as a business that can take financial contributions from donors, and then the donors can then write those contributions off on their tax returns. It reduces their tax liability, and it gives them an opportunity to give back and write that off. The other thing that it does is that we are exempt from certain taxes that the IRS looks at, from property taxes to some state taxes that we don't have to pay, sales tax. So it really relieves the burden of a lot of the financial obligations that we have to the government, so that we can fill the gap in the community that is needed. Nonprofits support and create a thriving community. Communities normally cannot survive without nonprofits filling in the gap for social services. So we are a social services nonprofit that helps alcoholic women, and now men, recover from alcoholism. We do this in 3 primary ways. We have a First Step program, which is a residential program that's 14 days that helps women immediately, in crisis management usually, detox from alcohol using a social detox method. Once they complete this 14-day program, they usually go into our Next Step program, which is a non-residential 3-month, 3-phase program where women can get supportive educational tools to continue to sustain recovery for a lifetime. The third program, which I think is equally important as the other 2, is our community program. And that is where we have our workshops, our meetings. This is where women from all over the community can come in and partake in any of our 4 or 5 classes and workshops that we have every day, open to every woman in recovery in the community. And they can sit in our meetings, they can get huge glimpse of the women here in our First Step program, and they can have the opportunity to give back and sponsor women. What this community does is it creates a sisterhood of all of us who are in recovery, where we can come and give back to the community multiple times during the day, 365 days a year, and we do this all for no cost. So all of our programs are no cost, and we are able to do that because we are privately funded. And what that means is that those contributions I was talking about earlier completely fund our programs so that we can remain no cost. The other thing about being independently funded, we don't take government funding, we don't take any kind of insurance funding as well, is that we can run our curriculum, we can have our operational structure, we can run it any way that we want to. We're not bound by any individual, we're not bound by any company. We really have an oversight of a board of directors, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But what that allows us to do is that we are independent of any kind of endorsements. We can be faith-based, we can run our curriculum, we can really do whatever we would like to do to make sure that we are helping every alcoholic and their family who wants and needs our help.
So well articulated.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully one day I can talk about Maggies like that. I just, it's so awesome.
It's been a while. It's been a hot minute, so that's why.
And I hope that our listeners can hear the passion coming through that Lisa has for us and for the community. I mean, it's just, I'm going to cry.
I know, I can't look at you. I'm going to cry too, because it's just a beautiful thing that we've created here together.
It is. Yeah, it is. I remember when I first started coming to meetings at Maggies over on Redwood Circle. Mm-hmm. And getting exposed to that community and being greeted by the front desk volunteer mm-hmm. and just feeling welcome from the very beginning. And mm-hmm. it was cool for me as someone who didn't come through the programs, right? And
exactly.
So, yeah. Beautiful. So can you talk about why we are not AA and how we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous?
Absolutely. One of the things that makes the Magdalen House different from Alcoholics Anonymous is because we are guided by a board of directors. We are not in the recovery business. We are a nonprofit. And what that means is that we're more like Salvation Army or Dallas Casa or North Texas Food Bank than we are Alcoholics Anonymous, because we are a business. We have a budget. We have an operations plan. We have expenses that we have to incur. We have several points of difference that allows us to govern our agency. We can do certain things that we don't have to follow the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. The interesting thing about the Magdalen House, and people think because we have a lot of women here on staff who are actually in recovery, mm-hmm. that it looks a lot like an AA group or something that Alcoholics Anonymous would endorse, or that we look like AA, but we're not. There's a lot of confusing things about Maggies and AA. One of the things that I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is Alcoholics Anonymous which was founded in 1935, is a very different entity. It is an entity that is not governed by anyone. Everyone in Alcoholics Anonymous is equal. It is created so that you walk shoulder to shoulder with the people who are in an AA group, and there's no leaders per se that govern. It's a servant leadership type of model where, much like the military, where servant leadership is leaders eat last. Mm-hmm. You have corporals, you have lieutenants, you have captains, and they all let the underlings eat in a mess tent or in a cafeteria before they do. I love that because it's really important, I think, for Alcoholics Anonymous to remain where everyone there is equal. Right. It's very unstructured, loosey-goosey kind of organization where I don't know how it survived for 80, 90 years, because I'm a very structured person. That would drive me crazy. I'd want to constantly try to run it. If I were anywhere near New York or trying to run that organization, I couldn't do it. However, AA is its own entity, and it has its own traditions that they follow, the rules that each home group follows. It is very different than the Magdalen House. Mm-hmm. However, we are loosely associated with AA, and I can get into that and talk about that if you'd like for me to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of confusing parts why Magdalen House may look like an AA group or Alcoholics Anonymous. The first is this blue book that we all have here at the Magdalen House. This blue book I'm referring to is the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The Alcoholics Anonymous book, which was written in 1939, was purposefully, intentionally not copyrighted. It is free to anyone who wants to use it, and you can pull information out of it, and there's no copyright issues. So what we did at the Magdalen House, because this is a program that works so well, there's so many for-profit rehab centers, you'll see they're 12-step based. We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
So what we did was we pulled some of the information out of the book, and we created a curriculum around the 12 steps that are enclosed or inside in this content of this book. So when you go to all of our meetings and our classes and you look at our operational manual and how we actually operate in the structure of our curriculum, it looks a lot like if you were to walk into an AA meeting. You're going to hear some of the same words. You're going to hear some of the same criteria for moving forward. You're going to hear some of the same jargon, some of the same principles that you're going to hear in an AA meeting, you're going to also hear at the Magdalen House, and that can be quite confusing. The other thing that I think was confusing back in the early days of the Magdalen House is before we really decided that we were going to create this nonprofit that would help as many women as we possibly could, the early days of the Magdalen House, in order to keep our doors open, a basket would be passed in each of our meetings and things that we would have here. And so people were confused because if you walk into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, is that there's a basket passed. And so that can be quite confusing. We immediately eliminated that in all of our meetings. We do it sometimes in some bigger meetings, like a birthday night or something, a bigger meeting where we will do that. But really, we have an operational strategic plan that is going to help us grow and help thousands more women. It is not sustainable for us to pass a basket in a meeting and that is going to cover our expenses. Our budget is well beyond a $20 meeting basket that we would get. So that was a part of our growth strategy and plan, is that we would not do that anymore. The other thing that I think is really quite kind of confusing is that we have women come in from their home groups and carry the message at Maggies. And so the women who are in our program, our clients, will hear from some of these women about AA, because most of the volunteers who come and carry the message to the Magdalen House have their own home group, and they're going to be talking about AA. And it appears that it crosses over a lot, and that can be really confusing.
Yeah. So, man, I have like a bunch of follow-up questions.
Yay.
Or even just like things, because I think like as far as the funding goes, there's a huge difference there between what we do here. I mean, we have an entire hired staff team to make sure that we have funding to continue operations, right? And, that's not the case with AA. The other thing that it made me think of too is that women coming in and carrying the message. So, because we get this a lot with next step groups of people saying, oh, well, our participants saying, I chaired a meeting at a group, so I carried the message. Can you talk about why that's not carrying the message if they're chairing a meeting at their AA group versus chairing a meeting here at Maggies?
So one of the things that I think is really important for the women who are part of the Magdalen House to understand is the women who are chairing these meetings, are coming and leading our classes, are doing it as a part of their group. Like they're representing their home group as a part of Tradition 5. That is mandatory as an individual. If I'm an individual of Alcoholics Anonymous and part of a home group, the people follow or recognize Tradition 5 is that they are coming to the Magdalen House on behalf of their home group and they are carrying the message. That is the commitment to a Step 12, right? So the women who are in our Next Step program, Magdalen House is not an AA group. It can't be a home group. I remember not too long ago, I was with Katie doing an orientation, and we were going around the room introducing themselves, and this guy, said, well, Maggies is my home group. And I kind of looked over at Katie, and I said, Katie, did he just say that? And she said, he did. And I said, well, we're going to be talking to him after this kind of workshop. And why he was confused is he's a part of our family support group. And he thought that our family support group was Al-Anon. And that was his home group because he'd been coming for so long. He was just confused about what that meant. we are not affiliated with Al-Anon. We are not affiliated with AA. We have some of the same principles because a lot of the women who work here as individuals, they are members of AA, so they're following traditions as individuals.
Right.
Well, I really feel like if you are a client here in the First Step, and then you graduate or you complete First Step and you move into our Next Step program, we really encourage all the women who are in these programs to get a home group,
right,
to get a sponsor, to come back and to carry the message here as a part of their own home group.
Right. Are you or someone you know struggling with the inability to stop drinking? At the Magdalen House, we believe that individuals with alcoholism deserve a place to recover with dignity. In our 2-week residential program, clients will be introduced to what alcoholism is and be presented with a solution, all in a loving and supportive environment. Our programs are absolutely no cost, and because we accept no government money, we can accept men and women from all over the world. If you want to stop drinking and cannot, call 214-324-9261 to do a phone screening.
The one thing that's so beautiful about Maggies is that our agency is run by volunteers. The primary purpose of our First Step coordinators is to manage our volunteers. So the volunteers are the ones who come in and actually create and facilitate our program. So that's another reason why it's so confusing, because a lot of our staff members and every one of our staff members in our program part of our staff are in the recovery. Right. So, but the cool thing, and I've talked about this a lot, is that if I am in recovery and I work at the Magdalen House, that is not a part of my own personal 12th step. Like, I can't say, well, I got to help a lot of alcoholic women today, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to put my pajamas on and I'm going to stream Netflix all night. If I am in recovery, my obligation and part of my journey as a woman in recovery is I'm going to go out and I'm going to continue to help alcoholics outside of my work here at the Magdalen House. It doesn't count. Right. You guys are paying me to work here, and that's very different. It's like I tell women all the time, it's like we work at McDonald's. We work at McDonald's. We don't work in recovery. It's just a job.
It's a very fulfilling job.
It is a very fulfilling job, but we all get pissed off at our bosses. We all get pissed off at the people that we work with. We all love the people that we work with, but it is very similar to a job. People think, oh, working at Maggie's is so idyllic. No. We all have to figure out how to get along, and we all have days when we just don't like our jobs. It is a job. So getting paid for that does not substitute just because we get to work in a nonprofit that helps alcoholic women. We still outside have to go out and have our own recovery program that's associated with whatever program you're in recovery. And usually that means that you're going to follow the dictates and the principles of your own recovery program outside of the Magdalen House.
Right. Perfect. We've already kind of talked a lot about meetings and like the people who are coming in, the volunteers who are coming in, chairing meetings as members of their home group, carrying the message. Can you talk about how else our meetings are different than Alcoholics Anonymous versus who can come and who can't?
That's a great question. If you notice, our meetings were women only.
At this location.
And we have a new location opening up on January 16th, a nice plug in there. But this location is women only. If we were an Alcoholics Anonymous group, we could not do that.
Right.
It would be open to everyone. So we're open to women only. The other thing is that we have a very specific curriculum and structure of our meetings that we follow. We have an opening and a closing, and we cannot vary from that. Now, I know that there's certain AA groups that have very specific formats that they follow. But here it is based on operations manual that we have. It's strategically and intentionally focused on growth. We really want to grow the company so that we can help alcoholic women, as many as we possibly can, and families. And from what I understand, Alcoholics Anonymous is there for the newcomer to walk in and find a place where they can recover. Ours is based on a business plan. We are structured so that we can grow. We want to create a model where men now and women can come and we can grow this community, and then we can duplicate it in different cities. We're going to have an operational structure. We're going to have a budget. We're going to have staff structure. We have staff onboarding. It is a very different model than how Alcoholics Anonymous is set up. We're not loosey-goosey.
Yeah, no.
We're not. And it's a very different feeling in our meetings. It does feel a little bit even like a rehab. And we're not a rehab center either.
Yeah.
And that's a different podcast that we can discuss. But we are not a rehab. We are a nonprofit that happens to be in the recovery space. But we are social services nonprofit that helps women, men, and families who have been struck or sick from alcoholism.
Yeah.
Affected.
Well, and the beautiful thing about having the gender-specific facilities and the gender-specific meetings is that we can ensure that we're providing that safe space for our clients, right? And especially in First Step, but then also anyone from the community who wants to come to a meeting can have that safe space. So I think that's just absolutely beautiful because it's so needed, you know? And I like to think that Alcoholics Anonymous does their best to do that as well. But, you know, things happen.
Things happen.
Things happen.
When I first got involved with the Magdalen House, I encountered a lot of women who had either they had trauma back when they were drinking, or they had some kind of trauma that they had faced or went through in their early recovery. And they had been turned off by a lot of some of these just recovery programs that were free. And so the women did not feel safe going into those environments. So what we did was we created this community where women could feel safe being here. And then what happened is once they got through the steps, they felt empowered, then they could go back into whatever recovery program, whether it's AA, DA, CA, whatever, DAA, and they could feel more comfortable. They were sponsored. They had this spiritual awakening. They felt that they could go back into those environments and give, back to the newcomer and not feel so threatened. They felt safe. They felt self-empowered that they could go back into those environments. So I'm hoping that we can help these AA or CA or DAA grow, because we are feeding these women who would never go there because they'd had bad experiences. And now they can go back there, and we've opened their mind up to that is and can be a safe place for them to help sustain their recovery for a lifetime.
Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk about that for a second.
So, I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I am a recovered alcoholic, right? It's like, if you know me personally, if you know me on any social medias, if you know me here at work, like, I am recovered alcoholic through and through. That's what I say.
Absolutely.
I'm very out loud about it, and so are you.
Yes.
Right?
We are.
So can you talk about why we do that, why we use our last names, right? Like, when I introduce myself on pretty much anything, it's Kelsey Amos, recovered alcoholic, right? And I know you use your last name as well. So can you talk about why we can do that here and why it's important for us to do that here at Maggies?
Absolutely. I think if we didn't, and I walked around, one of the biggest things, we talked earlier in this podcast about the confusion between Alcoholics Anonymous and Maggies. If I'm walking around saying my name is Lisa K, then it seems like I'm associated with AA because in Alcoholics Anonymous, from what I understand, you're not supposed to use your last name in public or even be associated with Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the way that's going to protect Alcoholics Anonymous, and also protects the individual from their own ego. So when I say Lisa Kroencke at Magdalen House, that differentiates myself from if I were a member of AA or just a member of the Magdalen House community, which is a nonprofit business. I want everyone out there to know Lisa Kroencke at the Magdalen House. So if they're Googling the Magdalen House or Googling me, they will see my affiliation. They will know who and where to call if they need help. Right. If I'm just Lisa K at the Magdalen House, it might be more difficult for them to find out because there's another Lisa K that I'm really close to here at the Magdalen House.
Oh,
They
yeah.
may not know who that is. And
Yeah.
so I use my last name because I'm associating myself with the Magdalen House. And I want people to know and be able to find me very easily. And if I'm not using my last name, that's going to be harder to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think, using my last name too, of like, just in general, of like, hey, I'm a recovered alcoholic. Because one thing that we really, really focus on here is that education, right? So it's so vital. Like, yes, we want women to come into First Step and to give them that safe place to detox and all of those things, but it's all founded and based on education, right? When I first got sober, I did not know what step 1 meant. I did not know I had a disease, right?
Yes.
I thought that I was just the world's most terrible person.
Yes. Me too.
And so, I want people to know that, like, there is a solution. There's hope for you.
Yes.
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 If you're dying, hey, us here at the Magdalen House, we found a way out. We can show you how it is. We
Yes.
can educate you on the problem
Yes.
and help you,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes. I love that. I can talk about me being a recovered alcoholic all day long, and not break any rules, or because I am simply stating my truth.
Yeah.
I'm not affiliating myself with anything other than I was a bad drunk and now I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Yeah.
So it's not anything to be ashamed of. One of the other things, too, I think might be confusing that I wanted to address real quickly in this moment is drug addiction. And when we say we only help alcoholics, that also can be confusing to people thinking that we are associated with AA, because AA only helps alcoholics for singleness of purpose. One of the biggest reasons that we only help alcoholic women now men here is because of the detox.
Yeah.
The way that we detox, and the social detox is whole nother podcast. We can't detox women and men from drugs. There's no judgment about drug addiction. My son is a drug addict. It's about us being able to only detox at this time alcoholics. And so that also can create some confusion because it seems similar, but it's not. It's really from a science standpoint and from a physical standpoint. And that's the reason. And you know better than anyone, because you are the Next Step program manager, that we have women in Next Step who are drug addicts. And so I love that we can, while alcoholism is their primary, we also can help women recover from many different things in that program, which I love that.
Yeah, same. I do too.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other points about the, why there's so much confusion between us and Alcoholics Anonymous that you wanted to touch on?
One of the biggest things that comes to my mind is I was on vacation one time. This is early on, and I was a volunteer at Maggies. I was actually on the board of directors, and we had a very specific situation with a couple of men who were coming into our meetings. And traditionally, we had always had men in our meetings at Maggies. When I got there, we had several men who would come to Maggies all the time. There was some confusion as to why men were allowed in, but men were, when I first got here, were allowed in. There was a situation that happened where we had to change that direction, and we had to not allow men in our meetings anymore. I was on vacation and got a phone call from someone telling me and telling the Magdalen House, and I happened to be chair of the board at that point, that we could not do that anymore.
Right.
That we had to allow men, that we must allow men. And I said, no, we do not. We are a business. We can do whatever we want, whatever we need to make sure that we are creating a safe environment for the women who are in our First Step program. At that point, we didn't have a Next Step program. And these people argued with me, and it got to the point where we had to very specifically distinguish ourselves from Alcoholics Anonymous, because we could make our own rules, and we had to create an environment where these women were safe. A lot of people did not agree with not allowing men in the meetings. It sounds kind of weird now because it was 10 years ago, but there's always an ongoing confusion because of the curriculum, because of our close association with a lot of AA groups. because they do carry the message here,
right,
that there is just confusion. But on top of that, Kelsey, there is a very black and white division from the two. There's no gray area between the Magdalen House and AA. It is black and white. People can confuse it, and if people have any questions at all about the difference, they can talk to you or they can talk to me anytime. We're open books, because I really feel like there has to be a very specific difference to make sure that we are a healthy organization and that we can maintain healthy relationship with our partners in home groups and Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right. Yeah. I love it so much.
Me too.
All right. So for just to wrap it up, what is one thing that you would want our listeners to know about the Magdalen House? And this could be anybody from a family member, someone who is maybe suffering from alcoholism or thinks they might be an alcoholic, or someone who just doesn't know what we do. I know that's really, really broad.
No, I think that's a great question. I think the biggest thing I would love for everyone to know is that all of our meetings, our classes, our workshops are open to everyone. Every woman in recovery, and now men, which I can go into that specifically, but right now, every woman in our community, whether you're in recovery or not, if you're just experimenting or trying to figure out the question, am I an alcoholic? Is my loved one an alcoholic? You can come and get that information here at the Magdalen House. You don't have to be associated with AA or DA or A. You don't even have to know what any of those acronyms mean. If you have any question about what the disease of alcoholism is for you or for a loved one, you can come and get that information at our 10 o'clock meetings, at our noon meetings, at our 2:30 meetings, and our meetings at 7 o'clock at night. We have a very, very flourishing, very specific, very intentional family support group that meets on Wednesdays at 6:30. And we have many people on staff who are in the program of recovery and who can answer any questions. But my biggest thing I would love for everyone to know is that all of our programs are no cost. There's no cost associated with you coming and figuring out, if you're curious, if you could have a problem with alcohol or drugs, you can figure out and get that question answered pretty quickly, and then get help, whether you're a family member or a person who is in the middle of your own disease.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're here to help. So if you're interested in attending any of our meetings, you can find out more information at magdalenhouse.org/get involved, I believe, or it might be community. We just updated our website, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the slash is. Yeah. If you're interested and think that you might need to get into our First Step or Next Step program, you can go to our website at magdalenhouse.org/get-help, and the phone number is listed there. And I hope that you guys just continue to tune into the podcast. Come join us for meetings. If you're interested in our men's program, that's also listed on the website as well. And Lisa, thank you so much for this.
Oh my
gosh,
this is great. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and hopefully this helps out our listeners for anybody who was wondering. So thank you guys. Have a great day. Catch you next time.
This has been RecoverED, hosted by Kelsey Amos and brought to you by the Magdalen House. I am Laurie Evans, host of the Hope for the Family podcast series. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services that we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels by searching for the Magdalen House.